symptoms of trauma, hyperarousal, constriction, disassociation, or denial, hypervigilance.
That was Samuel Brown speaking from the yard of the California prison. Let's spend the next few minutes learning a little bit more about Sam Brown. He's got quite a story to tell. Welcome, LA Progressive Readers family. Today I am privileged to be interviewing Mr. Sam Brown. And Sam, tell me, go ahead, interrupt me right now and correct me on your name, please.
Oh, no, I was just saying peace to everybody. So,
oh, you're saying peace? Okay.
That's all. It's correct. My name is Samuel Nathaniel Brown, but everyone called me Sam Brown for short, so it's all right.
Okay, great. So Samuel Nathaniel Brown is the co-founder of the Anti-Violence Safety and Accountability Project, ASAP, the creator of the 10P program, the author of the constitutional amendment proposal, the California Abolition Act, and one of the first of 24 men to graduate from Cal State LA's prison bachelor degree program. He's also the developer of the theory of emotional illiteracy-based criminality. And Dick and I had the pleasure of attending, we were auditing a class that was conducted by Professor Jody Armour of USC Law School. And we had the privilege of meeting Sam there and seeing a bit of his artistry and hearing some of his brilliant thoughts after being released from prison, where he served 24 years. Sam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about each of those things that, I mean, I can't imagine that you have done so much. Tell us about this Anti-Violence Safety and Accountability Project.
So the Anti-Violence Safety and Accountability Project, first of all, greetings, everybody. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you for the work that you and Dick do, and the contributions that you make to all of us evolving, you know, in our shared humanity as a collective. And it takes this type of work to do that. So thank you very much, first and foremost. The Anti-Violence Safety and Accountability Project was formed with Jamelia Land and Aram Fisher while I was incarcerated. And it was formed out of necessity. You know, they had been doing a lot of social justice work outside of the prisons, and I had been doing a lot of social justice work inside of the prisons. And when we met and combined our efforts, it was just like a no-brainer. And it was during the time at the height of the George Floyd tragedy when we formed the Anti-Violence Safety and Accountability Project. And what it encompassed was just a lot of work in the community with Jamelia being on the front lines of people who were dealing with trauma, officer-involved shootings, gun violence, Aram having a number of connections and doing social justice and policy work for many years, myself being behind the walls and being connected to those who, you know, are in that part of the struggle, and being wholeheartedly dedicated to effectuating change even there. We just combined all of our efforts to create the Anti-Violence Safety and Accountability Project and to ultimately house what was then the California Abolition Act.
Great, great. You know, when we met and you had an opportunity to share in class, I thought to myself, this young man is brilliant. And he's spent 24 years locked up. It's, in my opinion, we waste so much of humanity, so much brain power, so much energy. Young men, you know, at the peak of their lives, when they have the most energy and most drive. We've got 2.4 million people behind bars in cages, and another many millions on parole. In your 24 years, I'm sure you came into contact with young men that just had so much to offer. Talk to us a little bit about your experience there and how you were motivated to change.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I give all glory and honor to God, right? And then to my mama, because my mama who gave me knowledge of God, and that's what, you know, kept me on the path and made me unbreakable inside the prison system. and allow me to be able to learn and be that sponge. And I really appreciate the compliment of me being brilliant. And for every me that you all encounter, you know, there's somebody that's 10 times more brilliant than I am inside of the prison system or inside of a cemetery, but definitely inside the prison system. And I met a lot of bright people, you know, some of the brightest. And what people don't take into consideration is that anyone could be in a carceral setting. Anyone could make a bad decision. Um, and people need social capital. They need opportunities. So for me, I utilized my 24 years once I embraced the fact that I needed change. Because, you know, you asked me what compelled me to accept change, or, you know, initially I didn't think I needed it. And you would be surprised how many people walk in there don't think they need to change, because we're walking out of a system that wasn't. So they say they're going to rehabilitate you. There's a saying inside the prison, or how you going to rehabilitate me when you never habilitated me? Which is partially what led to me creating the 10P program, because as I sat in there trying to understand, why was I in prison? What led me to adopting criminality? What made me think it was okay to arm myself with a gun and potentially take the life of another human being, or place my wants and needs and desires over someone else? What led me to being like that? Because I wasn't born that way. I'm not an evil person. And as I looked around, the other people weren't evil. So I found myself just trying to understand, how did we wind up here? Blacks, Mexicans, Asians, whites, all of us. How were we here? And as I set myself on that journey, I just began to discover things about myself, you know, from adverse childhood experiences to epigenetics, trauma, and just the things that comes with being human. And I realized that stepping into the prison system, there was no mechanism in place to really help you rehabilitate. There were no signs that say rehabilitation over here. There was nothing that says change this way. I was given a knife, some alcohol, some weed, and said, hey, be cool. That's what I was told when I first went to the pen. I was given a knife, some alcohol, some weed, and some books, and said, hey, get knowledge of self. This was my orientation to the prison. No one was saying, hey, man, this is learn your triggers, learn your causative factors, understand the things that cause you to adopt criminality to begin with. That wasn't the conversation. You know, so for me, I just knew that I was a better person, that I deserved better. And I set myself on the journey to get it after a while.
So talk to me about the California Abolition Act.
Or the California Abolition Act, for the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution holds that involuntary servitude and slavery are prohibited except as punishment for a crime. And the majority of the states have a derivative of the 13th Amendment in their state constitutions. Here in California, it's Article 1, Section 6 of the California Constitution, which reads, slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited except as punishment for a crime. During the course of my time, I worked a number of jobs, right? And you will find a lot of people in prison working a number of jobs, because slavery, and when I say that, slavery, some people, you know, they get triggered. They think, oh, this is just a black issue. Here we go with this black stuff again. And it's none of that. It's an economic engine, to be honest, that exploits certain demographics of people. So even if you wanted to just take the traditional part out of it and look at it as an economic engine, it undermines our criminal justice system. It prevents people from getting the help that they need, and it places forced labor over rehabilitation. And so while I worked those numerous jobs that I just referred to you, told you about, I wasn't getting any certification for them. I wasn't getting paid for them. Since I've been out of prison, I can't put them on a resume. I can't put any one of those people that I work for as a reference. So in essence, how did it really lend to my rehabilitation? How did it really lend to public safety? It didn't. And we can do better as a collective. And it's incumbent upon us to do so, you know. So to get to the core of it, at that time, I had a job as a healthcare facility maintenance worker, which was basically like a hospital janitor. And this was at the onset of COVID-19. And I was the first person in a carceral setting to have to go inside of a cell and disinfect when someone tested positive for COVID. And I was scheduled to go to the Board of Parole hearings. I expressed to my supervisor, hey, I'm terrified for my life. I don't want to go in this cell. And, but I'll do it. But I don't want to continue to do it, because people are dying in droves all around the world right now. No one knows what to expect. And they told me that I had to go into the cells or else I would receive a 115, which is a disciplinary report, which is the equivalent of the modern day whip. Had I received that 115, when I went to the Board of Parole hearings, they would have denied me for 15 years. And then if there was mitigating evidence, basically that I had no other 115s or I wasn't a troublemaker, then they would have walked it down to 10, then 7, then 5, then 3 years. And that's what modern day slavery looks like. That's what involuntary servitude looks like. So I then went back and I expressed it to Jamelia, and she was like, hey, Jamelia was my partner, and she was like, well, can't you do something about it? And I was like, well, I can file an appeal, but it's going to be moot because the Constitution supports this practice. And her classic defiant stance, she said, well, let's change the Constitution. And so we set out to do that in correlation with the larger struggle across the nation and the Abolish Slavery National Network to get done here in California what was already taking place in places like Colorado, Utah, and Nebraska.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you did that. And I'd like to say from my research, at the time, I don't know if she was Assembly Representative Sydney Kamwaga,
Yes.
authored the legislation. And so I'd like to give kudos when I can to she is now a congressional representative.
Oh, are you kidding me? She is the warrior queen. Shout out to Congresswoman Sydney Kamwaga. Yeah, she was an assembly member when she decided to author the bill. Then she became a senator, and now she's U.S. Congresswoman. So we're so blessed to have her on the front line fighting for us. And she's going to author this legislation on the federal level. This is going to be her first bill that she pushes, I believe, with Senator Jeff Merkley and McKeema. So we're really looking forward to that. She's awesome. Thank you for shouting her out.
Yeah. That's really important because in the progressive community, which obviously I'm the publisher of the LA Progressive, I am a progressive. And oftentimes, if an elected official doesn't do everything that is purely progressive, they get a lashing from the progressives. But we need to stand up and say thank you when they do the right thing. And she has done the right thing in many instances. And speaking of that, a couple of days ago, Dick and I interviewed Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon.
Yes.
And so you had mentioned George Gascon in one of the classes that we attended with Jody Arma. I think you talked about him visiting the prison. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
It was amazing. So the first time, the only time thus far that I had opportunity to meet him was when I was in Blue. And they actually came in and did a town hall, him and 2 other district attorney candidates. And so they presented themselves and their issues, with their platforms, what they stood for, before us. And it was really nice to have an opportunity to participate in some semblance of civic engagement, which should always be a part of the rehabilitative process. And just being able to sit there and listen to them and feel involved felt good, for one. But I agreed with his policies and his views and his ideas, and him being a progressive district attorney. So he was someone that we all supported. So the other day when you heard me speaking about him, my views in defense of him were really strong, because I felt like, and I still feel like, he's a great man, a great person. And he didn't get the support, or doesn't have the support that he needs in order to carry out, thus far, what he stands for. I believe that the formerly incarcerated should rally behind him more. I believe that people need to understand that many of the problems that they try to attribute to George Gascon has nothing to do with George Gascon, nothing. But they paint it in the media with these sound bites and these snippets, and they make it look good, and they try to slander his name. So I'm really happy that you brought him up and that you had the opportunity to interview him, that you give me an opportunity to speak on it. We really support a progressive district attorney platform, especially George Gascon. This is how change happens. This is how change occurs.
Yeah, it's you're such a testament to how we waste the time that we have with particularly young Black men. In our educational system, the things that you've learned in the 24 years where you were behind bars, you should have learned when you were in school.
Correct.
Correct. And
I should have.
And why do you think that is?
You know, it's interesting that you would say that. And the fact that you brought that up, let me bring this up. They pay teachers in prison more than they pay teachers on the streets. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
So the education that is really most important is the one that's required to keep you out of the prison, right?
Right.
Growing up. They undermine that. But then once you're incarcerated, those teachers make exorbitant amounts of money, and most of the times they're not even really teaching. They're not even teaching. They're just sitting there. People are in the class. I mean, you have some really passionate teachers behind the walls. Don't get it twisted. But the bulk of them are just sitting there, and they're getting paid exorbitant amounts of money. So I just wanted to bring that up. That's one. That's why part of our prison system is just so messed up. I can tie this answer even to with George Gascon. I look at the enhancements that they give us, you know, as a young Black male or as a young Latino male, just people in the carceral system right now, the gang enhancements.
But before you go, a lot of our LA progressive community, many of them may not know what enhancements are. You know, what does that term mean?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that. So enhancements are like, let me see how I can break it down. You have a sentence. Let's say someone is sentenced for a crime. I could commit a crime. I shoot a gun. If I shoot the gun, let's say that it carried 10 years. I would get sentenced to 10 years. However, if I get hit with an enhancement, like a gun enhancement in and of itself, just having the gun increases the amount of time that I'm going to get. So let's say it might add 10, 20, 30 years just for having the gun. So the fact that I shot the gun, I might get 2 years, but having the gun, it gives me another 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. Gang enhancements, same thing. Let's say I stole a car, or I was in a car joyriding or running from the police or whatever, or fleeing from my life, whatever the case may be. Joyride, doing some kid stuff. You get one sentence if they say I did it, you know, just on my own. It gets enhanced if they say I did it because I was part of a gang. And oftentimes people are slapped on gang files that have, and they're not even in a gang, have nothing to do with a gang. And this has been proven time and time again that these police have created these bogus files. And so you have so many people whose lives, who probably should have got 2 years for joyriding, who's now sitting in prison for like 15 years or 20 years. And these are the type of tragedies, you know, some people don't see them as tragedies because it's not their family members, but these are tragedies, you know, that people like George Gascon are trying to prevent. When I went to my board of parole hearings, I went 5 times. George Gascon has prevented district attorneys from going to board of parole hearings to testify against people who are trying to come home. What that means is it's already hard enough to get past the board of parole hearings commissioners. They're not playing no games. They're not cutting any slack. They're not making it easy for you at all. You have the crime survivors family. You have Marcy's Law. You have all of these victims' rights bills that support crime survivors and their next of kin. That's protected. You have all of this criteria in place for the board of parole hearings to assess you to decide whether or not you're going to be an unreasonable risk to society. That's established. You don't then need a district attorney to come in and just say, well, you know what? This guy committed this heinous crime 30 years ago. And because of 30 years ago, we still feel he's a threat to society. You should not let him out. That was the practice. And George Gascon recognized that and stopped it. So in LA County, district attorneys don't go to board of parole hearings anymore and just contest somebody's getting out just because they contest them getting out. It saves money. Now you're saving the state money, and it's just totally unfair and immoral. It's ridiculous.
But it's
Someone
good for,
like
it
me,
was good for the district attorney's career.
it's all it was. Exactly. So you look at someone like me, I've done thousands of hours of self-help programming, you know, everything from cognitive behavioral therapy to the 10P program. I've created programs that CDCR now funds. They now fund my program, the 10P program. I walked out with 3 college degrees, all of that. Still, this district attorney from the county that I got convicted in Sacramento showed up talking about how bad of a person I was, how the few infractions that I did have while I was incarcerated demonstrated that I was still an unreasonable risk to society, that I should not be out of prison. And now here I am, I've been out, and I've been nothing but a positive example, a role model, a demonstration to everybody that this is what's possible when it's done the right way, from the person that's incarcerated, but also the support networks that are needed to, you know, have a successful reentry into society.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, if we truly had a California Department of Corrections and rehabilitation, I think that we would see more stories like yours. So basically what you've done is you have developed, created, and implemented your own rehabilitation program.
Correct. Called the 10P program. And I couldn't have done it without the help along the way of the many people, you know, that I encountered within the department. You know, from Sheila Castro to Dr. Hamad Castro, Dr. Hamad, to Coach Wilson, I mean, just a host of people, Miss Erica Lake, that believe in the program, believe in the work, and believe in the people and their ability to change. But when it's all said and done, yeah, I did help spearhead creating this rehabilitative tool that's been successful and well received by the population, as well as the administration and the department itself.
So now that you've been out, and how long is it since you've been released?
It's been approximately 15 months.
And so what's life been like for you in these past 15 months?
Challenging. It's been challenging, but it's been great, because I'd rather have these challenges than challenges as a person with a life sentence.
Oh,
Right.
So I didn't even know that you had a life sentence.
Oh, yeah, I was sentenced to life. I wasn't sentenced to 24 years. I was sentenced to 20 to life. And that's why I dealt with the board of parole hearings 5 times. You know, I wasn't guaranteed to get out. And there's so many more. So that's what I'm saying. Think about, there's so many women and men that have life without the possibility of parole sentences that are sitting there with 9 college degrees, thousands of hours of self-help programming, have taken the time to understand what caused them to adopt criminality as a coping mechanism, and are positive lights. And because of our sentencing structure and the way everything is set up, they're condemned. And it just doesn't make any sense, because no one is incorrigible, you know? So, you know, that what you see in me, I really appreciate it. There's so many more that are so much greater than me. And we have an opportunity, all of us right now, to refine and redo how we approach people who are accused of crimes, who commit criminal acts. We have an opportunity, and it starts with the end slavery in California. It doesn't start with, it starts with your thinking. It starts with you as a person. One of the things, though, that people can do is to support the End Slavery in California Act Coalition and the End Slavery in California Act bill, which is the new ACA 3. You know, the California Abolition Act Coalition?
Yes.
Is now the End Slavery in California Act Coalition. The California Abolition Act is now the End Slavery in California Act. It was authored by Sidney Lager, U.S. Congresswoman Lager. It's now authored by Assembly member and Chair Lori Wilson. And we're so honored to have her as the author. And so what people can do, and I know I talk a lot, I'll be quiet, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. And so what people can do, in addition to having an open mind and really start learning history and letting go of what they think or thought about slavery and it being over with and done and not having any impact on today, that's where it starts. Have an open mind and open heart and really look at the facts, right? Then support this bill, this legislation, because what it's going to allow us to do is to stop placing forced labor over rehabilitating people. We would be able to offer much better programs. You would be able to have people come out and be contributing members of society like me. You can mass produce people like me in prison if you only take out this forced labor element of it. If you stop placing the needs of Walmart, Victoria's Secrets, Nintendo, 3M, PIA, over the rehabilitating of people and the needs of the people who actually are victims or crime survivors, because I don't like to say victims. That's not an empowering word. We don't say that in the 10P program. So forced labor takes precedence over all of that right now, all of that. And we have an opportunity to change that. And when we talk about ending slavery, we would just really want people to understand how this ties all the way back, and it never ended. It was just repackaged and made to look different. And it's still decimating communities of color. So I don't want to keep running my mouth.
No, but I think that you're hitting on a point that's very important. The average person, unless they themselves have served time or they have family members or friends who have served time, the average person is usually unaware of the prison profiteers. Yes. And the prison profiteers are major American corporations. Over there are 4, some corporations that rely 100% on prison labor to manufacture their goods.
Right. All of the state furniture and all of the state buildings is made by prisoners. The signs that you see, the street signs, all incarcerated people. All the license plates, of course, everybody knows that, incarcerated people. Some of the call centers, you think that you're speaking to someone that's in, an office in somewhere in the United States, or maybe you think they're outsourcing and they might be in the Philippines.
Yeah.
You're actually talking to a woman that's in a prison in Folsom somewhere or in Chowchilla or something, and you have no idea. And then some of these same organizations won't even offer opportunities of employment to any of us when we get out.
No, I know that. So recently, Dick and I, there was a fire at our house, and the hillside was on fire. And the fire department, they unleashed a whole group of people that were putting out the fire. And I was standing beside the fire chief and, commending him on what a wonderful job they were doing. He said, those people are all inmates.
Straight up.
And I said, oh, wow. And I said, well, it's good, they're getting this work experience. So will they get hired, after they're out? He said, oh, no, we don't hire them.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. Just like that.
The 10P program has partnered up with the Forestry and Firefighter Recruiting Program. So now we are able to help people who are formerly incarcerated actually get hired as wildland firefighters. Because, the law has changed. In the Forestry and Firefighter Recruiting Program, they've done a lot of work in that area. My brother Brandon and his team. And so things are changing slowly, but it really takes us raising this awareness. It takes people like you and your husband and doing this type of work and having these discussions to bring it to people's attention. Because it's like, are you kidding me? They just did a wonderful job putting their life on the lines. I didn't even know that they were incarcerated people. Then once you told me, now you're going to turn around and tell me they can't even do this work once they're released?
Exactly what he said.
How could we go for that?
Yeah.
There's another group of people inside the carceral system too called ADA workers. You all don't see them because they don't come outside of the prisons and no one really knows about them. But American with Disability Act workers are basically caregivers inside the prison system. They push the people in their wheelchairs, they clean their cells, they clean the, the feces and the excrement behind them when they, can't control their bowels or their bladders. They carry their food, they take them to the chow halls, they collect their canteen, they do all of these things, everything a caregiver does. They couldn't do any of that upon their release. They're restricted from getting that type of license upon their release. No one talks about that. No one talks about ADA workers.
Unbelievable. Well,
Yeah,
as we come to a close, let's talk a little bit about your artistry.
all right, okay. Ooh, let's breathe a little bit, right? Woosah. So what would you like to know about my artistry?
Well, when did you start, and where do you get those lyrics? Well, just
Thank you. So I started doing music when I was 7 years old, right? I was following behind my big sister and my big brother. I looked up to them. My big sister, she's such a lyrical, she's a genius. And my uncle, he used to play all these rap tapes. And I followed behind my uncle too. So I got into rap, made my first one when I was 7. And from there, it was just my thing. And it was always an outlet for me. Because a lot of the hurt that I felt, a lot of the anger and sadness that I felt, I didn't know how to express it, but I began hearing other people express it in their rap music, from Boogie Down Productions to Def Jeff, LL Cool J, Ghetto Boys. And I began to use it as an outlet for myself too. Whether it was my imagination, me dreaming of one day having these yachts and helicopters and boats and big jewels in my music, to just talking about how mad I was and I just wanted to beat somebody down or hurt somebody and getting it out that way, or envisioning this place, this utopia, where it was just all love and positivity and peace. My music and my artistry always represented a vehicle for me to take myself, to where I wanted to be, where I needed to be, or allow someone else to go there. And to this very day, it still represents that for me. It represents that freedom.
So if someone wanted to see or hear something that you've done, where would they find you?
Thank you. Great question. So you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, all of the above, all major platforms. Go Gala Music, on Official Sam Brown Music, all one word, Official Sam Brown Music, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Apple Music, all of them, Official Sam Brown Music. And then you can find
Sam Brown Music. Okay.
Yep, Official Sam Brown Music. And then on Instagram and Facebook, you can find me as Sam.Nathaniel.Brown.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm going to provide links to all of that at the bottom of this. Well, Sam, it's been a real pleasure, real pleasure meeting you, talking to you. I'm really inspired. I remember one particular meeting that we had, and you shared some of your writings, and I left, I was kind of down, and I left the meeting feeling so inspired. And I thought to myself, here's this young man that just served 24 years, and he's offering me words of wisdom to lift me up. And I just wanted to thank you for that.
Symptoms of trauma: hyperarousal, constriction, disassociation or denial, hypervigilance, intrusive imagery or flashbacks, nightmares and night terrors, abrupt mood swings, temper tantrums, frequent anger or crying, panic attacks, anxiety and phobias, depression and feelings of impending doom, shame and lack of self-worth, inability to love, nurture, or bond with other individuals. And last but not least, reenactment of the trauma. Trauma doesn't know a color, trauma doesn't know an age, trauma doesn't know a tax bracket, trauma doesn't know any of these things. Anybody can be traumatized, anybody.
But they still happy. How they still giving others joy. So you make a great point, and I really thank you for that. And I want to make an offer anyone who wants to come to the 10P program, who wants to come inside the prisons, speak to the guys. If you're a crime survivor, you want to share your story, you just want to learn, please reach out and contact me. We do that. I would love to have you involved with the 10P program. Or if you just want to learn more, reach out, please.
Well, I'll put all of your, so I'll put all of your socials down at the bottom. And thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you,
Sam
Sharon.
Nathaniel Brown.
Thank you, Sharon and Dick and LA Progressive. Peace to y'all.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Likewise. All right.